Welcome to The Catch Up, a podcast from the Daily Catch where we take you inside the news. My name is Walter Mullin, and I'm the publisher of the Daily Catch.
And I'm Emily Sachar, the editor of the Daily Catch.
In this show, we discuss stories that have appeared in the Daily Catch. We give you insights into how we put the stories together, offer additional observations, and discuss where the stories may be heading as we move forward. But Emily, before we jump in, we have to acknowledge this is our first show of 2026. That's very exciting.
Happy New Year, Walter, and Happy New Year to our listeners.
So tell us a bit about your holidays. How was your holiday season?
Oh, gosh. Well, the best part was coming to your house for dinner, Walter, on Christmas. And the best part of that, in addition to the food, was getting to see the parrots. So I don't know if our listeners know, but Walter has a pair of parrots. They're older than my children. They are very old. But how old are they now, Walter?
One is 34 and the other is 22.
Okay, so they're not quite older than my children, but they're up there and they talk a blue streak and they're a riot. And it was great to be part of your holiday season. How was your season, Walter?
We loved having you there. My season was good. It was busy. December is always very busy for us. We're back and forth to the city. We have a lot of people coming in to visit. So it's wonderful, but we're always looking for ways to slow down. So when December 26th rolls around, we sort of exhale and just enjoy the rest of the year.
Yes, that's great. Well, we have a good episode, I think, for our listeners today.
Exactly. So Emily, are you ready to catch up?
I am ready. Let's do it. Today, I want to introduce again to our listeners our talented, wonderful Rhinebeck reporter, Eloise Goldsmith. Welcome, Eloise. New tensions are flaring in Rhinebeck. What is the issue now?
So the latest tensions center on an exchange of letters, one that came from the town board in mid-December and a second that came from the Chamber of Commerce sent to the town board on December 30th. The town board's letter said that they're interested in a more positive relationship with the Chamber of Commerce looking to the new year. There's been rancor there. However, they wanted the town board and the Chamber of Commerce board to meet, but they did not want the Chamber of Commerce board president, Luciano Valdivia, to attend the meeting. So I'll pause there.
Okay, so the town board sent their letter in mid-December. Can you read some of the key lines from that letter that talk specifically about this issue and both why they want to do this now and what their ask is regarding Luciano?
Mm-hmm. So the first line is that the town board wishes to look to the new year with a restoration of a more positive relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. So putting our best foot forward in the new year. They then go into sort of reiterate their stance on this proposed occupancy tax. This is a tax that the town board wants. It's a 3% tax on short-term stays, so Airbnb and hotel stays. It's something that tourists would pay if they come to the town and stay. And it would also apply to properties in the village as well.
So Eloise, can you read some key lines from that letter?
Sure. So the letter starts off, the Rhinebeck Town Board wishes to look to the new year with a restoration of a more positive relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. However, they do not want the Chamber president to attend a meeting. Here's the exact line where they say this. In the interest of the most successful interaction possible and in light of the public animus of your current president, we think it would be more productive and ask that he recuse himself from meeting with us at this time.
Okay. So Eloise, tell us and remind us, what is this rancor about?
So the rancor really began around this town board proposed occupancy tax. The occupancy tax is a 3% levy on short-term stays in the town and the village. So you would pay this tax if you're a tourist coming to stay at a hotel or an Airbnb in the town. It was first introduced early 2025. The chamber opposes this tax. They do not think it's a good idea. They sent a letter saying as much to the town board in March 2025. But over time, the discussion of this policy has become more personal, and it has brought out sort of interpersonal rancor, particularly between town supervisor Elizabeth Spinzia and chamber president Luciano Valdivia.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that rancor. How have we seen that? Where has it played out?
one episode where we know it became more personal is when the village board passed a resolution over the summer in June opposing the occupancy tax. They said, we don't think this is a good idea. We're going on record opposing this. And at that meeting, one trustee, Lydia Slaby, she made a strong statement sort of casting doubt on the town supervisor's willingness to share the revenue of the occupancy tax with the village. When potential revenue sharing came up, Slaby said, well, has she signed it in, quote, has she signed it in blood? Elizabeth Spinzia took that poorly. Lydia Slaby did apologize, but not to Spinzia directly, and it kind of devolved and became interpersonal. We know that from Valdivia's perspective, the chamber invited Elizabeth Spinzia to come speak Valdivia about the occupancy tax and discuss it, and that, according to him, she did not take him up on that request.
So just let's clarify a couple things. So I can understand from what you're saying there being some dissension and disagreement between the village and the town, right, around the occupancy tax revenue, how's it going to be apportioned? But explain how that relates to the chamber.
Right. So the village has many of the, vibrant businesses located in the town of Rhinebeck. One of the businesses, a key business in the village is Valdivia's restaurant Market Street. So there's a feeling that economic activity and, tourism is really focused on the village. And here we have the town imposing an occupancy tax that would go into the town's general fund, but it would really impact the village. In the village, we have, the Beekman Arms, which is an example. Those are both examples of places where people stay and would be subject to the tax.
Okay, so the rancor starts to develop, and we actually have a soundbite from Luciano Valdivia discussing when he believes this rancor began. And we'll play that.
Yes, this all started with the bed tax, and I think ultimately the reason that it escalated is, frankly, because Supervisor Spinzia is not comfortable with criticism, and she has a tendency to blacklist people, blackball them. She attacks people with any method that she possibly can. She slanders them around town, and we live in a small community, and she started to personally attack me to anyone who would listen.
We did ask Elizabeth Spinzia if she wanted to provide any sound bites to us about when she thinks the rancor began, and she declined to do so. So let's continue on. So the letter goes out from the town board. It's received by the Chamber of Commerce, by their board. What do they do then?
So they send a letter back. The lead signatory on the letter is Amanda Miller. She's the first vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. It's signed by Valdivia and all the other members of the chamber board. And I'll just read a couple lines from it. Your letter is an extension of the town supervisor's longtime practice of personally attacking and marginalizing anyone who disagrees with our policies. That's the second line. And they also say lower down, meddling in the internal affairs of a private organization by publicly demanding the recusal of its president is not only inappropriate, it is reminiscent of the very Trumpian practices that undermine public trust in government and non-governmental institutions. So pretty strong words. And
so they were really angry, like very angry at the suggestion that Luciano Valdivia would not attend this somewhat hypothetical meeting, right? There wasn't a specific date, there wasn't an invitation, but there was a discussion of a meeting, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So the letter gets sent from the chamber to the town. What, if anything, has the town done since then?
So there's been no further correspondence, according to sources that I've spoken with. Debbie Hecht, who is the newest town board member, she said that she found the letter, quote, bewildering. She told me that her feeling is if the chamber thought that this olive branch was clumsy, then they should suggest a meeting that works for everyone, and that the idea that Luciano Valdivia not attend a meeting was a request, not a demand.
Okay, so other than Debbie Hecht, you did some reporting with other town board members. What did they tell you?
So one town board member, Alan Scher, said that in retrospect, he thinks that the request that Luciano Valdivia not attend was, quote, unnecessary. He said, Valdivia can go to a town board meeting and say whatever he wants if he wishes. So to him, it seemed it didn't really achieve a purpose to ask him to not attend a meeting. But he did still sign the letter.
Mm-hmm. He did. Okay, so we're just going to continue, it sounds like, to follow up on this. Yes, we'll just have to see what's next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know this issue of apportionment of the potential bed tax is also underneath. We just discussed it. Is there any news that you have for us on that topic?
We do have a little bit of news. I asked the town supervisor about a proposed revenue sharing breakdown with the village, asking what the breakdown will be and for her on the record statement about that. And she said, our attorney is working on a revised resolution seeking the bed tax, aiming to introduce it in February. So she didn't answer this revenue sharing question directly. I'm not sure if the resolution will specify some sort of revenue sharing, but according to her, we can expect a new resolution in February.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I think we'll just keep following this and see where it leads us. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Walter, what do you have for me today?
Well, I just want to pull the camera back a little bit again, Emily. Some people might look at this story as sort of a, kind of a bit of gossip, a bit of he said, she said. How do we decide what to cover? Why are we covering this story? Back to my question, why should I care? Why are we covering this story?
Yeah. Well, I think we hit some of it a minute ago. I know there are some readers and listeners who periodically message me or email me and say the newspaper feels a little bit like page 6 of the New York Post sometimes. And I would say to that, well, page 6 does make news very often. We are not covering this because it's gossip. In fact, it's very difficult for us to cover the gossipy pieces of it because they're often not on the record. They're often not anything we can verify, and we always want to verify. We don't want to report on a spat in the bathroom at Bread Alone or a spat in the front of Luciano's restaurant. That's really not what we're about. But we're covering it, as I mentioned earlier, because it involves two very important people in our community, in our town. Elizabeth and Luciano, both are very important. And so people are watching what they're doing. And as I said earlier, it affects taxes indirectly and possibly directly, and it affects policy. And people are interested in policy. They may have friends coming to stay at the Beekman Arms, and they may want to say, by the way, there's an extra 3% tax, just letting you know, or maybe not, right? So that's the reason we cover. And sometimes we start covering something and it kind of goes down a rabbit hole and we say, we won't really cover that again for a while. But we think it's important when there's correspondence between two very senior organizations in our community or government and an organization, we want to be on top of that.
And I just have one specific kind of transactional question. When this correspondence is handled back and forth, how do we get a hold of it? Does someone send it to us? I'm just curious, how do we hear about it?
All different ways. So in this particular case, one of the parties to the letters gave us copies of the letters. And that's often how journalists work. They get one side or another will leak the letters, quote unquote. But other times, correspondence is in the packet of documentation that is part of the agenda for a given organization. So, for example, the Rhinebeck Town Board, this may be in their agenda packet for their next meeting. Because if they send out official correspondence, that needs to be available to the community to see.
Great, that's helpful. I think people like to know how we make the donuts, as it were. So,
yeah, I was really interested the other day. This is on the national news on the Venezuela story. The New York Times ran a really interesting Q&A with one of the reporters for the Times who was able to get on the phone with Donald Trump for 50 seconds right after the takedown of Maduro the other day. And that story is one of I looked the other night, it's one of the most highly read stories in the New York Times. And we love to share how we do our work. Sometimes it's difficult to do so, but when we can, we absolutely will tell our listeners and our readers how we do what we do.
Great. So 2026, here we go.
We go.
This concludes our episode of The Catch Up. If you like our broadcast, please be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite platform, and you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. A big thank you to Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud at Radio Free Rhinecilff for their help producing today's show. And thank you to Esther Martell for her help with editing. Emily, I look forward to catching up with you all throughout the year.
I do too, Walter. Thank you.